Hey guys, Ryan here from Aphex, and we're going to talk about the Aphex channel. It's a master channel and input processor that's designed to be able to give you a much better sound the entire way through your signal chain through a bunch of Aphex processing from the oral exciter, the big bottom, also de-essing. It has a mid-range parametric EQ. It also has a logic assisted gate so that you can cut out sounds that are within your room. So we're going to go over this channel and explain all of the features and how you can use them to make your audio much better. Now, the Aphex channel is actually running a hybrid tube and solid state preamp design, which basically means that at the front end of the preamp, you have a solid state design, meaning that it has much faster transient response and can capture that really fine detail in your sound. Whereas the back end of the same preamp actually has a tube design. And what that means is that you get a much more well-rounded, warmer sound out of that same input channel, so you can maintain really nice detail and also that warm sound that everybody loves with a tube preamp. You also have an instrument input. It's a 1 mega ohm instrument input, a high impedance instrument input. It's actually on the front of the unit where the microphone input's on the back. Now you can leave your microphone plugged in anytime you want to switch to recording an instrument, because as you plug it in, it switches off the actual input on the back for the microphone, so you don't have to disconnect your microphone to be able to record an instrument in the front. And that basically functions as like a DI. So if you want to record direct, guitars for reamping later on, or if you want to record bass or something like that, you can plug directly into that instrument input. Now, if we have a look at the controls that we have on the front of the unit, the first thing that you'll see is a 75 Hertz high pass filter. Now, when you're recording vocals especially, that's a very useful function, because what it will do is actually cut out any of that low frequency rumble that you might get from bumping a desk or a microphone stand that might otherwise affect the low end of your audio. So if you switch in that high pass filter, it's at 75 Hertz, so it's well out of the human voice frequency range, and it'll actually help you to cut out any of that noise. It's also useful to cut out extraneous noise that's coming in from outside the room, for instance, or air conditioner noise, rumbles of any kind like that. Next, we actually have some phase controls here. So we've got a phase invert button, which will basically flip the phase to help you deal with any phase issues in your studio. But we also have a phase rotator. Now, what the phase rotator does is actually quite interesting. It's something that's entirely dependent on the source material. So if I switch that on, you'll hear a little bit of a difference to the sound. It's very subtle, but what it basically does is it rounds out the waveform and makes the compressor actually function a lot better, because it doesn't react differently to the high end and the low frequencies. It actually processes them both at the same time. So I'm just going to switch that out for the moment. Up on the top, you can see here we have a 48 volt phantom power, simply for power and condenser microphones. We also have a minus 20 dB pad. That's for when you're recording very loud sound sources and overloading the input even when you've got the controls turned down. So you can run that 20 dB pad. And then we also have a compressor. So I'm just going to switch that compressor in, and immediately you can see on the meters here that I've got some compression happening. Now, the compressor is Aphex's Easy Rider compressor. It's a very simple compressor to use. The input gain is actually driven directly into the compressor, and you just have a very simple release control. Now, you've got slow or fast release. So if you set to fast release, it depends entirely on the input signal again as to how fast or slow you need to run the release. But I'm just going to run it here around the middle just to get a nice kind of easy compression there. You can see that we're pulling about 8 to 10 dB out of the signal that we're recording right now. So as you can hear, we're actually routing the audio that you're hearing from me right now with this Rode pin mic through the Aphex channel so that you can actually hear what the controls are doing. So here we've got the compression engaged. I'm going to leave that on for the rest of the video. Now, onward from that, we have a logic assisted gate. Now, gating will basically cut off the sound below a set threshold. So to give you an example, if we have the threshold set a little bit higher, what will happen is you'll see this gating start popping in as I stop speaking, as the level drops. Now, the next control along is the depth. The nice thing with the gate on the channel is that you don't have to have a fully silent gate like this. So if I turn that all the way up, you'll hear that as I stop speaking, you'll hear the silence come in. So it's completely cutting off the signal. I'm just going to turn that down again. Now, if I set that anywhere below the highest setting, we're only getting an attenuation. So that's really nice if you're in a studio situation where you don't want total silence between your audio. So if the gating comes in, you can see that it's just dropping the level down by a certain amount, and it's not actually cutting down to full silence. I'm just going to turn the gate off for now because we're in a quiet room at the moment. Now, next along we have the de-esser. Now, a de-esser basically takes out some of the sibilance in your sound. So when you've got a lot of S's on a vocal sound, especially with an up-close microphone, sometimes you have a really harsh kind of S sound. And what that de-esser will do is help you actually attenuate the S sounds. And you'll see that as I turn that down, you'll actually see the de-essing start to engage on the S's. She sells seashells by the seashore. And what that'll do is actually take out some of that harshness. Now, I often don't have problems with my S's, with my voice, so I'm just going to leave that off for the moment as well. Now, onward from there, we have the Aphex big bottom, oral exciter, and parametric EQ to help you actually shape the sound and add a lot more life to the sound. Now, the oral exciter is a famous Aphex processing technology that helps you add a lot more of the harmonics that are lost through the recording process back into the signal. So we're just going to switch that on. Now, all of these controls here for the big bottom, the parametric EQ, and the oral exciter are controlled here from that one switch. So if I turn that on, you'll immediately hear a difference because I've got the actual amounts on. So now you can actually hear that we've got some processing happening. Now I'm going to turn these all the way down and we'll bring them in slowly so that you can actually hear what we're doing. Now first we've got the big bottom circuit, which will actually add a nice harmonic lift to the low end of the signal and help you get that really rich tone in the bottom end. Now the first thing that you'll see on the big bottom circuit is the actual engaging frequency. Now this is a low pass filter that's engaged on the big bottom circuit to help you choose what frequency you would like everything to be affected below. So here we're going to set it to one of the recommended settings. The nice thing on the channel is that we actually have a recommended range to experiment with both the big bottom and the oral exciter circuit. So if I then bring in the amount, this is the amount of big bottom processing you want to hear, and you can immediately hear that the bottom end, the low frequencies of this circuit are starting to be enhanced harmonically. So I'll run that relatively high just to give you a very obvious example of what it'll do. And then if we go straight over to the oral exciter, that's going to excite the harmonics in the top end of the sound. So we're going to run a frequency similar to the low pass frequency on the big bottom. You have a high pass frequency on the oral exciter for which frequencies you want to actually kick in. So everywhere from 1 kilohertz to 5 kilohertz, you can choose for the oral exciter to start, and it'll affect every frequency above that. So we're going to put it in all the way from the lowest setting, which is 1 kilohertz. So it means everything above 1K is going to have the excitement happening. And if we turn that up, immediately you can hear the high end of the signal has been enhanced, and you can actually hear a lot of those harmonics again that are lost throughout the recording process. Then in the middle here, we have a parametric EQ where you can actually change the width, the Q setting here. So you can go a nice wide gentle Q, or you can go a much more narrow Q. And if I just apply a small boost here and then kind of play around with the frequencies, you'll be able to hear that affecting the actual sound. And for now, I'm just going to turn that off. Okay, now if we have a look at the middle section here where we have the metering, we also have a clock setting in the middle. This is basically if you want to utilize the digital outputs. Now the channel has a bunch of different digital outputs that you can use, and you can choose the sample rate using the selection on the front here, or you can actually use an external clock function if you've got a separate piece of gear that you would like to use to clock your entire studio. And there you have it, guys. That's the Aphex channel. It's a channel strip that's designed to be able to give you a full front end for your audio, and it's an entire replacement for the front end of your audio interface or other equipment.